Stella Sandell has a complicated relationship with both of her parents, but it wasn't always like that. This is what she shares with the prison psychologist. Some time ago 15-year-old Stella, as part of her school team, was getting ready to leave for a handball tournament. She hugged her parents Ulrika and Adam, and boarded the bus. Stella has a best friend, Amina. The girls admired Robin Shalander, the new assistant coach. The students were brought to a sports camp. After that, they prepared for the upcoming tournament. Later, Stella suggested to Amina that they go for a swim, but she didn't like the local lake. Robin praised Stella for her good throws. The girl invited him to swim together. He agreed. The water was cool, but they were both very pleased. At some point they felt a spark between them. They went into a beach house. Stella realized she didn't want anything more, but Robin didn't care. Suddenly the outraged lodge owner knocked on the door and witnessed a disgraceful scene. Adam, a priest, took his daughter home as soon as he learned what had happened. The girl tried to justify herself by saying that she did not want it. Hearing this, Adam stopped the car and asked his daughter again if Robin acted against her will. Stella confirmed it. Adam immediately got out of the car and called someone. Stella was subjected to a medical examination. The doctor found no clear signs that she had been forced into anything. At home, Ulrika asked the daughter to explain what had happened. Stella told her the same thing she had said to the father earlier. Adam was sure they should go to the police, but Ulrika wasn't convinced it was a good idea because the doctor hadn't found any signs. They didn't stand a chance of winning the case. As a lawyer, Ulrika knew what she was talking about. Adam couldn't pretend that nothing had happened, but in the end he supported his wife. When Stella heard that her parents didn't intend to go to the police, she cried. 4 years have passed. It seems that life has returned to normal for the family. Today is Stella's birthday, and she suggested to her best friend Amina that they meet. But first the family celebrated at a restaurant. The parents gave Stella a special gift for her 19th birthday, a pink moped so she could ride to work instead of using her bicycle. Stella was disappointed because she had asked her parents for money for a trip. Ulrika suggested they discuss it later to avoid ruining the celebration. However, Stella's mood was already spoiled. Ulrika briefly left the table to take an important call. When Adam learned that his daughter had taken time off from work by lying about a migraine, he said it was wrong because some people truly suffer from migraines. Later, Stella arrived at Amina's house on her bicycle. Amina's parents, Alexa and Dino Bisic, were happy to see Stella and even gave her some money as a gift. Amina hadn't finished her makeup yet. Later, Stella complained to the friend that the parents didn't listen to her at all. Both girls did bold makeup and put on provocative outfits before heading to a nightclub. There, Amina introduced Stella to her university classmates. Stella also wanted to get an education, but for now she worked at a bakery. Next year, Stella planned to go on a trip. Stella was upset that Amina was constantly getting distracted. The girl decided to look around, feeling superfluous. Outside the club, she met a handsome guy named Chris and asked to go to Copenhagen with him. Stella had always dreamed of escaping her boring life. Together they visited an exhibition by a famous artist, though neither of them really understood modern art. Afterward, Stella and Chris went to one of the local nightclubs, where they danced, drank and had fun. For a little while, Stella forgot about all her problems. It was only in the early morning that they returned. In those moments Stella felt free. Maybe Stella and Christopher would meet again someday, but for now that didn't matter. 6 weeks have passed. Adam prepared dinner and wanted to call his daughter, who was running late. Ulrika told the husband that Stella was an adult now, so he shouldn't bother her. Even though it was Friday evening, Ulrika was going to work. This upset Adam, as he had put a lot of effort into preparing dinner. Later, Adam noticed that his wife had left her work badge behind, which meant she hadn't gone to work at all. Although Adam has a family, he feels lonely. The daughter wasn't answering his calls, so he sent her a few messages. It was already past midnight but still no response. Adam was awakened by strange noises. By this time his wife was already asleep beside him. Stella had come home and wasn't in the mood to answer the father's questions. There were bloodstains on her clothes. Adam was saddened by how distant the people closest to him had become. In the morning, Adam was woken up by an argument between his wife and daughter. Stella couldn't find her phone and was late for work. Adam asked his wife if everything was okay at work. Ulrika evasively replied that it was. Adam wanted to bring tenderness back into the relationship with his wife, but she always found excuses. Adam found the daughter's phone and wanted to bring it to her at work. Ulrika told her husband that he was being overprotective of Stella. In the afternoon, the couple played tennis with the friends. Later Dino Bisic, Amina's father, told Adam how envious he was of his perfect marriage. Of course Adam wasn't about to tell the friend about his problems. Ulrika was planning to have lunch with Dino and his wife Alexa. Adam didn't join them because he was running late for a christening. On the way, he saw the police and forensic experts. Adam asked a passerby what had happened. So far it was only known that someone had perished. As a pastor, Adam was ready to offer any help. The officer thanked him discreetly. Ulrika was unfaithful to her husband and frequently met with her lover, Michael Blomberg. She lied to her husband about being delayed at work. Did he suspect anything? One morning, Ulrika noticed that she had once again forgotten her work badge the day before. The relationship between mother and daughter had become strained. In the afternoon, Ulrika had lunch at a restaurant with her friend Alexa. Incidentally, Alexa's daughter Amina decided to study law, following Ulrika's example. Ulrika felt ashamed that the daughter had failed her school exams, even though the parents had provided her with every opportunity. At home, Ulrika received a call from Michael, who told her that Stella had been arrested on suspicion of taking the life of someone named Christopher Olsen. This was the first time Ulrika had heard that name. Witnesses allegedly saw Stella at the crime scene. Ulrika wanted Michael to be her daughter's lawyer. Knowing that the police would soon arrive with a warrant, Ulrika searched the daughter's room and found a bag of her clothes under the bed. Hiding the bag, Ulrika went outside. Detective Anders Thelen showed the woman a search warrant, explaining that her daughter was suspected of a serious crime. Ulrika pretended not to understand what was happening. The police were about to take the woman to the station, unaware that the main evidence was in her bag. A team of forensic experts was searching the house. Stella was already at the station. Ulrika tried to call her husband, who at that moment was baptizing a baby. After taking all the necessary biological samples, the police led Stella to a holding cell. Not long before these events, Stella had been walking home along a dark street, flinching at every sound. At home, she tried to pull herself together and took a shower. In the present, Ulrika fears that the police will want to check the contents of her bag. At the police station, Ulrika was interrogated. She said that the previous evening she had dinner with her former colleague Michael Blomberg. Ulrika wasn't sure exactly what time her daughter returned home. When Ulrika received a call from her father's nursing home, she ignored it. When asked what Stella was wearing that evening, the woman replied that she didn't know. Stella was allowed to meet with her lawyer. Michael told the girl that he knew her mother. Michael also assured Stella that he would do everything possible to get her released. From now on, Stella must not speak to the police without her lawyer present. The first hearing would take place on Monday. The staff at the nursing home could no longer cope with Ulrika's father and asked her to come. As soon as Adam learned what had happened, he immediately went to the police station. Ulrika hugged her husband and said that there were witnesses to an argument between their daughter and 32-year-old Christopher Olsen around 1 a.m. The couple had no idea why their daughter would have been interacting with a much older man. Ulrika urgently needed to go to the nursing home, while Adam stayed at the police station. He reread all the messages he had sent to his daughter that night. Adam deleted the last 3 messages, which were sent at the alleged time of the crime, and spoke with Detective Thelen, who asked the man to describe his day yesterday. Adam said that during the day he had been at the church, and in the evening he had prepared dinner. According to him, the daughter came home before midnight. Of course, Adam, contrary to the Bible, was ready to lie to protect his daughter. Ulrika arrived at the nursing home. Her father was behaving terribly, tormenting the staff. Ulrika entered the room. Her father was asleep, and she decided to hide Stella's bag of clothes in his dresser drawer. Adam couldn't believe that all of this was really happening. In town, well-meaning people had set up a small memorial for Chris. Adam silently said a prayer. A man approached him, saying that Chris had been a good, friendly guy. This man was his neighbor. He had heard the guy's screams on the night of the crime and had seen a blonde girl with a tattoo on her arm the day before. Stella used to work in a bakery. One day Chris Olsen sent her a friend request on Instagram. Since then, the young people had started messaging. It seems Stella had fallen in love despite their age difference. Before her date with Chris, Stella carefully chose her outfit. She decided not to take her pepper spray and lied to the father that she was going for a walk with Amina. Chris picked Stella up in his expensive car. At the restaurant, the girl shared that she was saving money for a trip to escape the parents' control. Chris in turn said that he worked with trading companies. Stella asked her new acquaintance why he had chosen to meet with her and not someone his own age. Chris replied that she seemed like an interesting person. After dinner at the restaurant, the young people walked along the pier. When Stella tried to kiss Chris, he pulled away, saying he didn't want to rush. His past relationships hadn't ended well. In the present, Stella's parents were powerless to influence the situation. After meeting with the prosecutor, Michael informed them that Stella would not be released on bail. Despite the lack of solid evidence, the police were fixated on the shoe print at the crime scene, which supposedly matched Stella's sneaker. There was also a witness who had seen Stella leaving Olsen's house. The autopsy showed traces of pepper spray in Chris's eyes. The same one was seized from Stella during the arrest. Chris was born in Stockholm but studied here. He made good money from cryptocurrency, pulling off several suspicious deals. The guy likely had many enemies, and Mikael wanted to focus on that. One of the potential suspects was Chris's ex-girlfriend, Linda Levander. She had repeatedly filed police reports against Chris for threats, so she had a motive. Later, Adam told his wife that he didn't like Mikael. But Ulrika was confident in his competence. At home, everything was turned upside down after the police search. Adam didn't want to believe that his daughter could be involved in what she was being accused of. He couldn't just sit at home while Stella was in custody. Adam managed to find Linda Levander's address and went to her apartment. Upon hearing Christopher Olsen's name, the girl wanted to close the door, but the pastor insisted on talking. Thinking that the pastor had been sent by Chris's mother, Bodil, Linda let him into her apartment. When Adam expressed his condolences, the girl said that she didn't grieve for Chris. They had dated for 2 years, and their relationship was far from simple. Linda was sure that Chris had provoked Stella. Adam asked if Chris had been seeing other girls. At that moment, Linda realized that the priest had not been sent by Bodil. Adam hurried to leave, noticing Linda's sneakers in the hallway. Could she be hiding something? Adam met with Detective Thelen, saying that Linda Levander had the exact same sneakers as Stella. The detective assured that they were considering all possible leads. Adam denied that Stella had a boyfriend, but their messages said otherwise. On his way out of the police station, Adam ran into the prosecutor and demanded to know why he and his wife weren't allowed to see their daughter. But the prosecutor wasn't willing to answer the pastor's questions. The case was all over the news. Adam felt uncomfortable appearing at the church because everyone knew what his daughter was accused of. Some parishioners no longer wanted to see him as their pastor. Adam's life was falling apart, and he was powerless to stop it. Stella was transferred to a different cell. She was under strict restrictions, which meant no access to her phone or the internet. The guard was extremely polite to her. Stella remembered seeing a picture of Chris with another girl on Instagram. But she tried not to think about it, since Chris had recently invited her to go to Stockholm with him. Stella planned to lie to her parents, saying she was going to a friend's place in the countryside for the whole weekend. When she saw a pair of white sneakers in a store window, she wanted to buy them. Full of excitement, the girl went to meet her lover in Stockholm. Everything seemed to be going perfectly. The cottage where Chris was staying had a breathtaking view. During dinner at a restaurant, Stella shared her dream of seeing the world. She wasn't afraid of being disappointed in herself because that had already happened a long time ago. Chris said that this meant she had darkness inside her. And that darkness wasn't always easy to control. Stella asked her beloved what had really happened between him and his ex-girlfriend. Chris told her that Linda had been too jealous and wanted to control him in everything. That's what led to their breakup. They no longer kept in touch. Stella wanted to get even closer to Chris, but he asked her not to rush. This threw her off a bit, making her remember the day she and Robin had been at the lake. Stella started behaving exactly as she had then, and she got what she wanted. After the weekend, Stella noticed Linda Levander in the bakery. Linda tried to warn her, advising her to look inside Christopher's living room drawer. However, Stella didn't believe Linda. Her feelings for Chris were too strong. Later, after stealing a bottle of expensive champagne from the parents' stash, Stella went to Chris's apartment. They had a good time together. In the morning, Stella didn't find Chris next to her. He was nowhere to be found in the apartment either. Taking advantage of the moment, Stella decided to rummage through his things and found a lot of different pills in his drawer. Hearing the key turn in the lock, she quickly put everything back in place. Chris brought food. In the present, the guard escorted Stella to the staff psychologist, Shireen, who explained that she was not helping the police with the investigation. Their conversation was strictly confidential. Shireen asked Stella what the tattoo on her arm meant. She replied that it meant nothing. Stella was not in the mood to talk. The guard was the only person here who didn't irritate her. Adam read the nasty things people were writing about his family online. Everyone had already decided that Stella was guilty. In front of her husband, Ulrika tried to keep it together, but in reality she was on the verge of breaking down. Adam called Walter, an old acquaintance, and soon went to see him at a rural church. The priests took a walk through the field. For Adam, family had always been the meaning of life, and now he was crying, unsure how to help his daughter. Walter advised Adam to turn to God more often and hugged him. Ulrika wasn't ready to give up, and after pulling herself together, went to the university library to get the Swedish Code of Laws. Then she discussed some high-profile cases with her colleague, Leonard, where the police had initially arrested the wrong person. Ulrika was very happy to see Amina, who was worried about her friend. In a cafe, Amina told her that Stella didn't know Chris well. They weren't a couple, they just met occasionally. Amina hadn't interacted with Chris and couldn't say for sure what kind of person he was. Mikel told Ulrika about Adam's altercation with the prosecutor outside the police station. It was known that the police had found a DNA sample at the crime scene, but it was still unclear who it belonged to. Ulrika called her good acquaintance from the prosecutor's office, Veronica, and arranged a meeting. In public, Ulrika never showed her true feelings. Veronica had no right to discuss Stella's case, but that was not why Ulrika is here. She was concerned about her husband's recent altercation with the prosecutor. Veronica promised to talk to Jenny Jansdotter, the prosecutor. Thanking her, Ulrika left. Knowing that the prosecutor was absent at the moment, Ulrika sneaked into Jenny's office and took photos of some of the case materials. No one noticed. In the hallway, Ulrika ran into Jenny Jansdotter, who was outraged because the parents of the suspect weren't allowed to be here. Hastily apologizing, Ulrika left. In the elevator, she was able to let her emotions out a little. In the car, she looked at the photograph of the case files. The DNA found at the crime scene belonged to Amina Bezic. Could she really be the true culprit? That night, Ulrika couldn't sleep, recalling how 4 years ago, she had asked her daughter what had happened in the beach house. Stella had confessed that while she didn't push Robin away, she didn't like what was happening. The next day, Ulrika met Amina at the university library and directly asked her what she had been doing at Chris's house. The girl admitted that she had been there once with Stella. Ulrika knew Amina was lying. The girl didn't want to continue the conversation. Ulrika called Alexa and suggested they meet at a store. Alexa expressed her sympathy and invited Ulrika and her husband over for dinner that evening. Suddenly Ulrika spotted Robin, and later told Adam about it. Ulrika hated to see Robin so pleased. That evening, the couple had dinner at the Besic's house. Amina wasn't there because she had gone to training. Apologizing, Ulrika said she needed to use the bathroom. But in reality she was rummaging through Amina's room, looking for clues. She found a photo of Amina with Stella and Chris together. When Ulrika opened Amina's laptop, Adam and Dino entered the room. He indignantly asked what was going on. Ulrika stated that Amina was lying and that her laptop might contain evidence. This led to a conflict. At home, Adam wanted to talk to his wife but she didn't have the strength. The next day, Alexa tried to talk to Ulrika about that misunderstanding, but she just drove away, not knowing how to act. Despite everything, Ulrika continued to give lectures at the university. But she couldn't focus on anything. At one point Ulrika felt unwell and lost consciousness. Her colleagues called an ambulance. Ulrika woke up in the hospital. The doctor explained that it was a panic attack. Ulrika needed rest. She felt utterly exhausted and could no longer endure all of this. Ulrika believed she was a bad mother for not being able to keep her daughter safe. Once a week, Stella attends counseling sessions with a psychologist. Stella doesn't understand why her parents haven't divorced yet, as they have nothing in common except their disappointment in her. Stella thinks the mother would prefer Amina as her daughter. They used to be a normal family. When the psychologist asked when things changed, Stella abruptly shifted the conversation. Shireen still asked her to answer the question. Later, the guard brought lunch to Stella in her cell. Taking advantage of his friendliness, Stella asked if she could borrow his phone for a while. But the guard refused to break the rules. Stella remembers how Amina advised her to break up with Chris because he was much older. But Stella didn't care about that. Amina was upset that Stella was constantly texting Chris. Amina didn't have a boyfriend because she was always busy with her studies. Additionally, Amina felt that her friend was fixated on Chris, as she had even forgotten about her plans to travel. To make up for the misunderstanding, Stella suggested going out together. Ulrika was always busy with work, so she had no time for her daughter or husband. Stella was irritated that the mother barely responded to her and was drinking too much wine. The friends were at a bar together when suddenly Stella noticed Chris with another girl at a cafe across the street. Stella went over there, demanding an explanation from her boyfriend. Chris introduced the girls to his friend Beatrice and suggested they join them. Beatrice was very friendly and took a group photo of Chris, Stella, and Adam. Realizing there was nothing going on between Chris and Beatrice, Stella calmed down. She and Amina had to get up early the next day, so they were about to leave. Already in the taxi, Amina realized she had forgotten her bag and was going to return to the cafe, while Stella headed home. That night, Amina called Stella upset, saying that Chris had given her a ride. It was clear Amina was hiding something. The next day after work, Stella decided to visit Chris spontaneously, but he was clearly not happy, saying he didn't have time. When Chris slammed the door in Stella's face, she immediately called Amina, asking where she was. Amina replied that she couldn't talk because she was at the library. Adam and Ulrika were planning to go away for 2 days, so Stella would be home alone. She didn't expect Chris to come over. As an apology, he brought her a bouquet of red roses, promising it wouldn't happen again. Chris looked around the house and suggested they have some fun in her parents' bedroom. Stella didn't like the idea, but Chris was very persistent. Now sitting in her cell, Stella remembers this. Chris wasn't as perfect as he pretended to be. Mikkel visited Ulrika in the university hospital. When he kissed her, Adam caught them. Ulrika could no longer stay here and quickly left the hospital. Adam didn't want to believe the wife had betrayed him. Why was God sending him all these trials? When Ulrika returned home, her husband wasn't there. In the meantime, he was just driving around the night streets, ignoring calls from his wife. Ulrika was very worried, but this time she forced herself to stay away from the wine. Suddenly there was a knock at the door. Amina stood on the doorstep crying, saying that this shouldn't have happened. Later, Ulrika asked Amina to keep secret what they had just discussed. No one should know about it before the trial. Before Amina left, Ulrika asked her what she had done with the knife. After cleaning the house, the next day Ulrika dug up the knife in the place Amina had indicated and then went to the nursing home. Her father had significantly improved since their last meeting. Tord wasn't very happy to see his daughter. When the nurse left them, Ulrika took out the bag of Stella's clothes from the dresser. Tord, suffering from dementia, didn't understand what was happening. Ulrika washed the knife in the nursing home kitchen and placed it with the rest of the dishes. Then in the forest, she burned Stella's belongings and threw her phone into the lake. Finally Adam came home and began silently packing his things. And that silence was unbearable for Ulrika. Adam told his wife that he had suspected her infidelity for a long time but didn't want any conflicts. He had hoped Ulrika would confess if she truly cared about their marriage. Things were now complicated by the fact that Mikkel was Stella's lawyer. Ulrika justified herself by saying the husband had paid her little attention. Adam in turn told the wife that she had become like her father, blaming everyone around her and seeking solace at the bottom of a bottle. Ulrika didn't like what she heard. The couple had a huge argument. When they both calmed down a little, Adam told Ulrika that they had let their daughter down 4 years ago when they tried to pretend that nothing had happened. Since then, their lives had been falling apart. Adam declared that he wanted a divorce. Ulrika begged him to stay, saying that only together could they get through this, but he had already made up his mind. Adam just drove down the road, thinking about his family and crying. He had lost everything. Or was there still something that could be changed? Adam tracked down Robin and beat him up right on the street. A woman walking her dog witnessed this. Afterward, Adam broke down in tears. Stella was again taken to the psychologist, who suggested talking about what had happened 4 years ago. Stella said the parents hadn't gone to the police because they wanted to protect her. Stella didn't blame them but herself, as she hadn't even tried to push Robin away. The psychologist explained that this was a common reaction. It didn't mean Robin had the right to continue. Nothing that happened to Stella was her fault. Shireen asked the girl to repeat this out loud. She cried, unable to do so. Shireen hugged her. The prosecutor decided not to press charges against Adam, so he was free to go. Besides, Robin had no claims against him. Everything felt like a blur to Adam. Ulrika met him outside the police station. She wished she could fix things, but Adam could no longer trust her. The guard decided to cheer Stella up and brought her a cheeseburger and a milkshake. She was genuinely grateful for his kindness. In the past, while her parents were still away, Stella heard a knock at the door. It was Linda, who just wanted Stella to listen and draw her own conclusions. According to Linda, Chris was a psychopath who craved total control. The pills he kept in his drawer weren't meant for him. Stella didn't respond to Linda but ignored incoming calls from Chris to see how he would react. Later, Stella called Amina and suggested they meet to talk. By the evening the parents had already returned. Stella still hadn't answered any of Chris's calls. Today she decided to watch TV with her parents. They rarely spent time together as a family. Stella also ignored Chris's messages. She wanted to talk to the parents, but the focus shifted to Ulrika, who was about to go to the kitchen to pour herself a glass of wine. Adam didn't like his wife's addiction to alcohol. The next day, Stella continued to ignore calls and messages from Chris. So he drove to her house and started honking loudly. Before going outside, Stella took her pepper spray just in case. Chris hugged the girl, saying how much he missed her. He also said he wanted to show her something. Stella didn't want to go with him because she had to work soon, but Chris insisted. He brought her to a plot of land he had recently bought. Chris wanted to build a house here and live with Stella. However, Stella wasn't excited about it, although she tried to pretend everything was fine. Chris couldn't help but notice. When Stella chose to meet with Amina that evening instead of him, Chris called her a juvenile. He did take Stella to work after all, but didn't let her just leave. Chris thought that maybe she hadn't answered his calls because her phone was on silent mode. Stella didn't give a clear answer. After finishing her shift at the bakery, She received a message from Amina, who was already waiting for her at the bar. Stella headed there but didn't find her friend at the bar. The waiter said Amina had gotten very drunk. Stella looked for her everywhere and ran into Beatrice, who mentioned that she had recently seen Chris here. Soon Amina sent a message saying she had a headache and went home. This was very unlike Amina, which made Stella even more worried. Since Stella's phone had died, she couldn't even call Amina. Stella left the bar and went to Chris's house, knocking on his door. Tomorrow Stella has a court hearing. That night, she couldn't sleep due to anxiety, thinking about the good moments she had with Chris. But everything had turned into a nightmare. In tears, Stella pounded on her cell door, saying she couldn't breathe. The guard didn't come until the morning and reassured her. Stella's lawyer sent clothes for today's hearing. Stella hugged the guard. Ulrika went to Mikkel, saying that today in court, Amina Bezic would give testimony that would turn the case around. Mikkel wanted to kiss Ulrika, but she pulled away, realizing that this couldn't continue. Now Ulrika had to focus on her family. Stella was led in handcuffs to an escort car. The press gathered at the courthouse. The case had become a sensation. Adam and Ulrika understood that their behavior would also play a significant role. The lawyer reminded Stella not to say anything that they hadn't discussed beforehand. The hearing began. The judge asked both sides to present their positions. The prosecutor declared Stella guilty. The judge asked the defendant to tell in her own words what had happened on the night of October 7th. Stella explained that she was supposed to meet Amina at the bar that evening, but the girl wasn't there. In the end, Stella thought Amina was at Chris's house, so she went there, but no one answered the door. After that, Stella went home. The prosecutor asked the defendant to describe in detail the route she took home. There were some inconsistencies in Stella's words. When asked what feelings she had for Christopher Olsen, Stella answered that she felt affection. The prosecutor was convinced that the defendant was jealous of Chris for her best friend, although Stella denied this. That evening, she was only worried about Amina. Next, other witnesses were called, including Stella's boss, the bakery owner. The main piece of evidence was a shoe print found near Chris's body. This print matched Stella's sneaker, which had soil on it. Chris's neighbor testified that he heard loud screams that night. It was Adam's turn to testify. He claimed that his daughter had returned home before midnight. However, the prosecutor knew Adam was lying because experts had recovered deleted messages sent shortly after midnight. Adam chalked it up to a cell phone network failure. The prosecutor was convinced that Adam was covering for his daughter and had destroyed evidence, including her clothes and phone. The judge announced that the next hearing would take place tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. For now, the couple still lived together. Yesterday was Adam's birthday, but Ulrika had completely forgotten about it, as had Adam himself. Tomorrow they would likely hear the court's verdict, and it would all be over. In her cell, Stella remembered how she knocked on Chris's door that night, but he didn't answer. Through the attic, Stella managed to climb onto the roof and then onto Chris's balcony. Loud music was playing in the apartment. Stella wasn't prepared for what she saw. It was time for the next hearing. Alexa and Dino were also present. Amina was called as the next witness. She took an oath, swearing to tell only the truth and nothing but the truth. The lawyer asked the witness to describe the nature of her relationship with the defendant. Amina said they were still friends. She also stated that Stella had no tendency toward violence. The prosecutor asked Amina if she was attracted to Chris. The girl replied no. She had seen Chris on the night of the crime, which contradicted her previous testimony. That evening in the bar, Chris approached Amina and openly flirted with her. Amina didn't like it. Chris apologized and offered her a drink. Amina reluctantly agreed. Later, Chris waited in the car while Amina felt intensely intoxicated from just one glass of wine. Staggering, Amina walked down the street. Chris followed the girl and against her wishes put her in his car. He then took Amina's phone and sent a message to Stella. In court, Amina testified that Christopher Olsen had put substances in her wine and subjected her to inappropriate actions. Amina hadn't told anyone because she feared no one would believe her. When Amina regained consciousness that night, she allegedly fled from Chris's apartment. The prosecutor didn't believe her testimony, thinking Amina was simply trying to protect her friend. The judge called for a recess. Amina's parents immediately hugged her. In the past, after Amina had told everything, Ulrika explained that things would become more complicated for the court if there were two potential suspects. The prosecutor would need to prove whose motive was stronger. Adam asked his wife why she hadn't told him about Amina earlier. Ulrika simply didn't want her husband to have to lie. She was aware of what had happened on the night of the crime, but Adam didn't want to know the truth. It was time for the final testimony. The prosecutor demanded an 18-year prison sentence for Stella. The lawyer countered, arguing that the prosecution had neither a crime weapon nor other physical evidence, and therefore Stella should be acquitted. The judge declared the hearing concluded and asked all unauthorized persons to leave the courtroom until the conclusion of the deliberations. As Stella was being led away in handcuffs, accompanied by her lawyer, she recalled catching Amina and Chris in his apartment. Amina had been unable to resist. Stella attacked Chris, using pepper spray. The girls tried to escape together. Finally, the court was ready to deliver its verdict. Stella was found not guilty and was released. The parents embraced her in tears. Then Stella hugged Amina and her parents as well. The mutual support allowed them not to break down until the very end. Soon after, Adam returned to church with a clear conscience, though no longer as a priest. Ulrika, on the other hand, turned to faith. Incidentally, the couple reconciled. Just as she had always wanted, Stella went on a trip. She started praying more often. Stella often remembers the night when she and Amina ran away from Chris. He had been chasing them with a knife in his hand. When Chris slipped and fell, Stella attacked him. At that moment she wasn't fully aware of her actions. After that, the girls fled the scene of the crime. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel not to miss more exciting new products. Also, the authors will be pleased if you leave your opinion in the comments.